Right now, three motorcycle brands are fighting for their lives, and most riders have no idea. Tariffs you never voted on are raising the cost of every frame, fork, and fender crossing a border. Financing rates are choking dealers. And corporate bean counters are making decisions that could kill the bikes you love before 2027 even arrives. We've pulled the documents, trade schedules, court filings, and real dealer invoices. The numbers don't lie. In this video, you'll see exactly how these brands are being squeezed by policies that treat motorcycles like poker chips in a trade war. What does that mean for you? Higher prices, thinner parts support, and brands your kids may never get to ride. Stick around till the end, as the last name is the one that'll hurt the most. Number 3. KTM. Power always looks invincible until the bills come due. For years, a bright orange name from Austria rode high on racing wins, aggressive growth, and the kind of confidence that makes a company think the throttle will never need to roll off. Tariffs are exposing how fragile that assumption can be. There was a time when watching orange bikes dominate dirt, rally stages, and race grids felt like watching a rising empire. Each championship added to the myth. Dealers were proud to carry the brand. Riders believed they were buying into a company on the move, not one fighting for survival. Production climbed, plants expanded, and partnerships across Europe and Asia multiplied. It all made sense in a world of easy credit, booming demand, and open borders. That is not the world we are in now. Behind the scenes, that expansion came at a price. High volume meant high fixed costs. New facilities, new tooling, and new staff are not cheap. The company leaned heavily into emerging markets, betting that selling smaller displacement machines in places like India, Southeast Asia, and Latin America would keep the growth engine roaring. Those bikes often carry thin profit margins, so the business model depended on moving a lot of units while keeping supply chains efficient and parts costs under control. The tariffs creep in as a few percentage points here, a retaliatory measure there, until suddenly cross-border shipments that used to be routine start to hurt. For a company that sources components from multiple countries and relies on overseas partners for manufacturing, every new barrier adds friction. When a brand is already in legal restructuring, with its parent filing for court-supervised self-administration, that friction turns dangerous. Cash reserves get thin, financing dries up. Every container delayed or taxed more heavily tightens the noose. Older riders who have run shops or small businesses know this feeling even if they never read a tariff schedule. You build a system that works at a certain cost level. Margins are not huge, but they are steady. Then your input prices climb, your financing terms get worse, and your customers start hesitating. You can raise sticker prices and hope loyalty carries you, or you can eat the difference and hope volume saves the day. Neither option looks great when the economy cools and your share price is already in free fall. The company tied to that bright orange color has not just been cutting prices, it has been cutting people. Hundreds of employees are being shown the door, not only on the factory floor, but in engineering, logistics, and even motorsports. Production lines have been paused, projects shelved. For a brand built on constant innovation and visible racing presence, that kind of retreat is a red flag. When the legal phrase self-administration appears, it means the company is trying to reorganize before creditors or courts make the decisions for them. Tariffs add a brutal layer to that struggle because they are unpredictable and political. One trade dispute between blocs can suddenly make exporting from Europe to North America or importing key parts from Asia far more expensive. For a company betting on scale, that can turn warehouses full of unsold bikes from a temporary problem into a crisis. It becomes harder to discount slow-moving stock without destroying already thin margins. Dealers start to sweat as floor plan costs stack up, and consumer financing gets more expensive in a high-interest environment. There is also the risk few riders think about until it hits home: long-term parts support. When a company cuts staff, slows development, and fights to stay liquid, it has to prioritize ruthlessly. High-profile race teams, marketing, dealer incentives, and new models fight for funding against the less glamorous business of maintaining deep parts catalogs and distribution hubs. Tariffs that raise the cost of imported components tilt that balance further. Suddenly, keeping older models well supplied with affordable replacement parts looks less attractive on a spreadsheet than chasing short-term cash. Riders feel that in delayed shipments, higher part prices, and fewer options on dealer shelves. Some industry watchers point to potential saviors. Large manufacturers in China or India may see a distressed European performance brand as an opportunity. Existing partnerships with Asian firms make that scenario even more likely. A buyout could preserve the badge and some of the technology, while shifting more manufacturing to lower-cost regions. On paper, that sounds like a solution. In practice, riders know it can go either way. Sometimes fresh capital and scale revive a brand. Sometimes the name survives as a sticker while the spirit fades into cost-cut corners and corporate compromise. Tariffs complicate even that rescue route. An Asian buyer might be able to avoid some European export duties by shifting production, but they still have to sell into markets where trade tensions move fast. Politicians have learned that power sports and vehicles make high-profile targets for pressure campaigns. A brand that once moved freely across borders can suddenly find certain models or whole categories hit with new duties. Every time that happens, price competitiveness erodes further against entrenched players with larger domestic plants or deeper pockets. Riders who prefer big American touring rigs might be tempted to shrug and say the orange brand's problems are someone else's concern. That view misses the bigger point. When a performance manufacturer in Europe buckles under combined pressure from overexpansion, soft demand, and tariffs, it sends a message to the whole industry. It warns that chasing volume with thin margins and far-flung supply chains is not as safe as it looked during the easy years. It also reduces competition, especially in the off-road and high-performance segments, which can eventually give more pricing power to whoever is left standing. Fewer strong players rarely benefit riders in the long run. Culturally, the orange name was built on aggression, daring, and mechanical bravado that drew riders who loved mud, ruts, and fast corners. Watching that spirit dragged down by financial strain and trade politics feels like seeing a fearless racer slowed by flags and penalties, not by any lack of skill. If tariffs continue to rise between major trading regions, the path forward for this brand looks narrow. It either finds a strategic buyer willing to absorb the shocks and invest through the storm, or it successfully convinces creditors that a leaner, refocused company can still compete. That means trimming dead weight, managing inventory honestly, and making smarter bets about which segments to chase. It also means being brutally realistic about where bikes are built, where they are sold, and how vulnerable those paths are to political whim. Performance alone will not be enough. One way or another, tariffs are forcing this once relentless climber to face gravity. The outcome will say a lot about how much room remains in the modern market for smaller, high-performance focused manufacturers that live and die on global supply lines. However it ends, the lesson will echo far beyond one color of plastic and steel toward other names that thought the rules of math and politics did not apply to them. If you want straight talk on where the motorcycle world is really heading, hit like, subscribe to stay ahead of the industry spin, and share your own take in the comments so other riders hear what you are seeing today. Number 2. Harley-Davidson. There is a certain sound that still turns heads at a fuel stop. A deep, steady heartbeat, a little rough around the edges, backed by chrome and luggage that has seen more miles than some cars. That sound has meant American road freedom for generations. It also masks a hard truth few riders think about when they hit the starter. Every one of those big twins depends on a global web of steel, aluminum, electronics, and shipping that politics can choke in an instant. For a long time, the big Milwaukee name felt untouchable. Good years, bad years, it always seemed to find its footing again. Older riders remember when cheap imports were supposed to wipe it out in the 1970s and 1980s. Instead, it regrouped, leaned hard into heritage, and came back swinging. Government protection on heavyweight bikes played a role back then. Many riders saw that as the country giving a homegrown legend a second chance. The tariff talk today is very different. Modern trade fights rarely single out one friendly brand as a favorite. They slam whole categories, whole regions, and then trigger retaliation from the other side. When politicians use tariffs as leverage against Europe or Asia, they are not worrying about the price of a full dresser in Kansas. They are worrying about headlines and balance sheets. Yet every new percentage point slapped on steel, aluminum, or exported motorcycles eventually lands on those showroom floors and service bays. The old idea of tariffs as a shield has quietly flipped. On the home front, the brand still cuts and bends a lot of metal inside American borders. Riders take pride in that. They like pointing to frames, tanks, and cases that did not come out of some anonymous overseas plant. Even so, the raw ingredients and many of the components feeding those assembly lines cross borders before they ever reach a welder or a painter. When tariffs raise the price of imported materials, those costs stack up inside every frame rail and fork leg. It is invisible at first, but it is there. A premium image gives some room to hide that kind of pressure, at least for a while. Buyers already expect a big touring rig or heavy cruiser from this brand to command serious money. For years, that faith in heritage allowed the company to raise stickers and fees faster than many paychecks rose. Older riders accepted it, sometimes through gritted teeth, because they trusted what they were getting. Tariffs test the breaking point of that trust. There is only so far you can push before even loyal customers shake their heads and walk away. Export markets add another layer. The company sells a lot of pride overseas. In Europe especially, riders pay good money for the chance to roll American iron down narrow streets and autobahns. When foreign governments answer American trade moves with their own motorcycle tariffs, those riders feel it first. Some pay more and stay loyal. Others pivot to local brands that cost less and offer richer modern features. From the factory side, either path stings. Margins shrink or volume falls, sometimes both. In response, boardrooms start playing a familiar game. What can be trimmed, postponed, or canceled to keep numbers in line? New engine families, electric experiments, and niche models cost real money long before they ever pay off. When tariffs stretch payback periods and soften orders, those bold bets suddenly look reckless to nervous executives. The safest move, on paper, is always to double down on what has worked before and squeeze extra pennies anywhere possible. Riders see that as fewer real innovations and more cosmetic changes on the same old bones. Meanwhile, the used market waits in the wings. It is full of well-kept touring machines, guardrail-scarred cruisers with fresh paint, and older rigs that have never left the garage without a wax job. Many of them can still cross states all day without complaint. When tariffs help push new bike pricing farther out of reach, those older machines start to shine. Riders who once dreamed of riding home something fresh off the showroom start looking at clean 10 or 15-year-old examples instead. That does not hurt the culture, but it does hurt the new sales column. Dealers end up wedged in the middle. They have floor plans to pay, staff to keep, and service bays to feed. When corporate tells them wholesale costs are climbing due to tariffs and materials, yet customers are already grumbling about price and fees, the tension on the sales floor rises. Some stores lean into creative add-ons and surprise charges to claw back margin. Others quietly discount trade values to make numbers work. The result is the same. Riders walk out feeling like the relationship shifted from partnership to knife fight. Tariffs also echo through the parts counter. Even if a complete motorcycle manages to dodge certain duties, the components often do not. Bearings, electronics, chrome pieces, and specialty hardware may arrive with fatter price tags long before anyone at the counter hears the word tariff. The dealer just sees updated invoices and adjusts retail accordingly. For riders who maintain older rigs carefully, that can add a few painful extra dollars every time they stock the garage for winter or tear into a big overhaul. The hit is not dramatic, but it is relentless. Some might argue that a brand built around tradition should simply lean harder into domestic sourcing and old-school methods as a way around these problems. The reality is more complicated. Emissions rules, safety standards, and rider expectations have changed since the 70s. Modern engines, even air or oil-cooled ones, rely on electronics, sensors, and precise machining that often come through international supply chains. You cannot simply bolt together a 1968 playbook and hope regulators look the other way. Tariffs squeeze that modern reality, not some romantic past. So what does survival look like in this environment? It probably does not mean another round of government help tailored just for heavyweight American motorcycles. More likely, it means a grinding mix of belt-tightening, smarter political lobbying, and hard choices about which models absolutely must stay American-heavy, and which can accept more global content without betraying the rider base. It might also demand a more honest relationship with dealers and owners about where the pressure is coming from and how the company plans to handle it. In the end, tariffs are just one more test in a long history of tests. Economic crashes, fuel panics, quality scandals, and changing tastes have all taken their shots. Every time, the survival of the bar and shield story has depended less on clever advertising and more on whether real riders still felt that the bikes underneath them were honest, durable, and worthy of pride. Trade wars raise the stakes, but they do not change that core equation. Watching how this company responds to the pressure will tell older American riders a lot about whether the badge they grew up respecting is still being run by people who understand the weight it carries. If you value honest breakdowns on what threatens the brands you ride, make sure you subscribe so you do not miss the next deep dive when the industry makes its next move. And riders need clear, experienced voices like yours. Number 1. Indian motorcycle. Some names feel light when you say them. Others land heavy, like a story dropping on the table. The Indian name is one of those heavy ones. It carries almost a century of glory and collapse, of racetrack smoke and factory silence, of disappearing from the map and then clawing its way back under new ownership. That kind of history does not forgive cheap decisions. It also does not leave much room for error when tariffs start turning every shipment into a more expensive gamble. Older riders remember when Indian existed more as a ghost than a brand. You saw the name in black and white photos, in museum corners, in crusty stories about board track racers and early American highways. Then, after years of false starts and badge-slapping pretenders, serious money stepped in. Real engineering, solid build quality, and a full lineup returned. For the first time in generations, there were again two American legends facing each other across the showroom. That mattered. It brought back a kind of balance. With that comeback came a promise, spoken or not. The promise that this time the name would be respected, not just milked. The promise that the revival would not be another quick flip by a company chasing nostalgia cash. Riders with long memories watched closely. They looked past the brochures and paid attention to metal, wiring, fit, and finish. They also watched how the company handled its own symbolism. When a brand uses native imagery, history, and a loaded name like Indian, it steps into territory where respect is not optional. That is why the quiet removal of the full-color headdress logo struck such a nerve. For some riders, the change looked like a thoughtful adjustment to modern times, a way to show respect toward native communities by reducing caricature. For many others, it felt like a corporate retreat, a move made to soothe boardrooms and lawyers rather than to honor any real conversation with the people supposedly being respected. Taking away the color while keeping the name felt like trying to wash away controversy without actually doing the hard work. That controversy alone would be enough to create an identity crisis. Tariffs turn it into something worse, because once you introduce tariff pressure, You are not only arguing about logos anymore, you are arguing about whether the whole revival can survive. A revived brand like Indian sits in a very different position than a century-old giant with deep roots and sprawling plans. It has fewer dealers, fewer long-term contracts, and less cushion when things turn rough. Its parts network is still maturing. Its customer base, while passionate, is not as large or as deeply entrenched. When tariffs start hitting the raw materials, the imported components, or the finished machines crossing borders, the shock runs deeper. There is simply less fat to burn. Trade fights between regions do not care that a revived American badge is trying to stand toe-to-toe with a larger rival. They only care about leverage. So, when tariffs land on motorcycles or on the metals and electronics that feed them, Indian has to make hard calls, absorb the added cost, and bleed cash. Pass it through to dealers and customers, and risk losing fragile momentum. Or quietly cut quality and support to hold prices while protecting margins. None of those paths is clean. Each one risks doing damage in a different direction. For a smaller dealer network, the impact can be brutal. A single slow season with higher wholesale costs and fewer qualified buyers can push a borderline store into the red. When that store carries a younger brand that still has to prove itself, it is tempting to reduce floor stock, delay parts orders, or drop the line entirely in favor of something easier to move. Every time that happens, a bubble of loyal owners loses local support. Service intervals stretch, warranty work gets harder, and the daily reality of owning the bike changes. Owners notice those cracks. They might still love the way the machine rides, the way it looks parked during a fuel stop, the way strangers ask about it. Yet they also see that the nearest trained technician is farther away, that parts take longer to arrive, that the company's messaging grows more cautious and less direct. Tariffs pressurize all of that. A disrupted shipment here, a cost increase there, and suddenly the proud revival starts feeling a little brittle. The parent corporation sits at the center of those decisions, looking at spreadsheets instead of sunsets. To them, Indian is one piece of a bigger portfolio. It may be a prestigious piece. It may even be a personal favorite for a few executives. Nonetheless, when tariffs squeeze profits and shareholders demand reliability, the temptation grows to treat the motorcycle arm as expendable. Not in a dramatic overnight shutdown, but in a slow, quiet starvation of investment. Less money for new platforms, less patience with struggling dealers, less tolerance for thin margins on metal that is hard to move in a hostile trade climate. That is what makes the combination of cultural controversy and tariff risk so volatile. The first shakes rider confidence in the brand's soul. The second shakes faith in its future. When both land together, older American riders who gave the revival a chance start asking hard questions. Will this company still have their back 10 years from now? Will parts still be available at decent prices? Will the name still stand for American craftsmanship, or become just another licensed sticker stamped on whatever is cheapest to build? It does not help that Indian cannot lean endlessly on underdog charm. In the beginning, it could play that card. We are the comeback kid. We are honoring history. We are the alternative. That story resonated. Over time, though, riders stopped grading on a curve. They compare service experiences, trade values, and price stability against other options. When tariffs creep into the picture, those comparisons get sharper. If a rival model stays reasonably priced while the Indian equivalent climbs out of reach, the emotional edge dulls. In many ways, tariffs expose how much of the revival was built on solid ground and how much sat on clever marketing. A strong foundation means realistic sourcing, disciplined growth, and honest communication when things change. A shaky one means chasing short-term volume in export markets, promising too much to dealers, and hiding the ball when costs begin to rise. Riders do not need access to internal documents to sense which is which. They feel it in how the company speaks, how quickly it responds to problems, and how it treats the people who believed in it first. There is a path through this storm, though it is narrow. It would require Indian to double down on authenticity exactly when corporations usually retreat into spin. That means openly explaining how tariffs are affecting pricing without playing politics. It means committing publicly to long-term part support, even if that means slimmer profit on spares. It means standing by dealers rather than hanging them out to dry when inventory slows. It even means revisiting the logo and identity debate in a more honest way, talking directly with Native communities and riders instead of issuing quiet memos. So the real threat is not that tariffs alone will instantly kill Indian. The deeper danger is that under tariff pressure, corporate leadership chooses short-sighted fixes that betray the promise of the revival. Losing some market share can be recovered. Losing the respect of riders who still care about what the name stands for cannot. In that sense, the next few years will decide whether Indian remains a living American legend or fades again into a story told in past tense. Another cautionary tale about what happens when you hang a heavy name on a fragile foundation and then let politics shake the ground beneath it. The road ahead looks rough for these three brands. Politics and profit margins don't care about the riders who kept them alive. So here's my question. Which brand hits hardest for you? Let us know in the comments. If this was straight talk you needed to hear, smash that like button and subscribe, because we're not done exposing what the industry won't tell you.